Hi, I'm Mike Coyle, and you're watching Inside Exploration. Today I'm here with Enrico Di Cesare, who is the newly appointed CEO of EVSX, which is a subsidiary company of St-Georges Eco Mining, listed on the CSE under SX and the OTC under SXOOF. Enrico, thanks for taking the time out of your day to talk to me today about everything that you've been doing.
It's a pleasure, Mike.
So congratulations on your new role as CEO of EVSX. This is a company focused on battery recycling. So why don't you tell us how that all came together?
It started when we looked at a product from Nevada, Iconics clay, and we started thinking outside the box to try to do something that many people have been challenged with to try to do economically. As we went through it, well, we realized that it would actually might work on spodumene and lepidolite. We tested that, it worked. Then it was, maybe this is a perfect fit for also battery recycling. And we tried it on that. So that was how the evolution started. Sometimes you have to be challenged to think outside the box and bring in new ideas.
Now you were onto this early though, because you put some of the battery recycling technology into your original patent, did you not?
That is correct. But in 2018, once we realized the selective leach was working so well with lithium, we took some time back and thought about it and said, okay, where can we apply this? We tested it on a few different spodumines. We tested on lepidolite, and we knew it would work on batteries too. So we added that to the system. It might seem like we just got started on the batteries today, but we had already planned it back in 2018.
Excellent. So you received some EV batteries not that long ago. You've been doing the testing. Talk to us about how that process is going.
So what we did there is, one, you're learning about each battery. You can't just assume what you're going to find inside. We've looked at what other people were doing. Most people discuss, 90% weight recovery and things like that, which sounds great. But more and more, when we looked into the details, we realized the critical elements were not always recovered in a form that could be reused by the industry. So we took a step back and we said, well, do we really have to reinvent the wheel on how you segregate steel, aluminum, and plastic? And the answer is probably not. Let's take that part and focus the development on the critical element recovery. So right now, what we're trying to do is come up with a solution that's more universal for all the types of batteries, depending what will be available at any one time in the industry. I'm not going to lie to you, Mike. I can't predict what the batteries in the future are going to look like. They're evolving, and even the companies that say they might have the best battery today, they might throw out that battery with another one tomorrow. And we see a lot of similarities, but also variations. So we're going to try to build something that has the flexibility. We're going to leave a bit of space in our modular approach for maybe one new element that's added that's critical as well in the future. And that's the way we're developing it right now.
I'm glad you touched on that because there's been a lot of chatter of switching over to the LFP batteries, which are a little more focused in iron, but your background and your experience stems from the iron industry. So is that something that you could foresee having a solution for those types of batteries if they get implemented down the road?
That's actually a pretty good question. Some of the stuff that we're using actually came from the stainless steel industry from my early years. A long time ago, but still applicable. And yeah, when you look at LiFeP type batteries, that one was the one that was an easy fit for the first testing that was done back in 2018. So we're really aligned on that. Most of our focus now is on the other elements and doing them economically, like nickel, cobalt, to be recovered as well. Again, you have Hydro-Quebec that's looking at lithium metal foil. And they've done alliances with Mercedes-Benz, US Army. Will that become the solution? We have the solution for that. Okay, check. Is it going to be some type of combination of nickel, lithium, or lithium metal and some type of alloy? We're comfortable that our process works with those as well. What we don't know is there any hidden secret in one of the batteries? So that's why we've decided to process all of them. Now, once we do that, we focus on synthetic, fix whatever we need to fix, and then redo it with an official battery to confirm that we were able to successfully do that. So that's what's going on in the background. So there's a lot of people that will be asked to work rather rapidly, but we're working through it. And I guess you'll get to see the batteries piled up on your visit when you come over to Quebec.
I'm looking forward to that. So you've successfully been able to extract 99.99% of the lithium in your selective leach. Now, I can't find numbers like that anywhere in the market. So congratulations for achieving those numbers. I think the big question for investors right now is, what are the recoveries looking like on nickel and cobalt? Are those pretty relative to industry standards?
So right now the leach has been achieving the same for all the critical elements. Okay, so where our main focus now is, where will the losses be? In every process step, you have some losses. Yeah, you have to be honest about that.
Yeah.
So that's what we're working on now to confirm those, and we'll update the market as soon as we feel comfortable that repeatability has been done and what our real number is.
I didn't expect to get a number out of you, but I thought I would try. So based on your early testing, how confident are you in getting this process to market this year, Enrico?
I believe that we'll be in pretty good shape towards the fall of this year. We're going to reorganize to have testing done in multiple methods in parallel for the purification steps. There'll be different labs doing each piece. St-Georges will be the integrator collecting the information. In some cases, you might have 3 options. Some cases, you'll only have 1, and you still have to integrate them all, depending what the battery is. Every country is going to have people at different levels of advancement. So I'll make up a scenario here. Let's say you have a group in England that's done all the segregation, steel, aluminum, copper, and a black mass, and they want you to help them turn that into a product that can go. But that could be an alliance that can be done in that country, for example. And each country will look at that afterwards. But our approach is going to be more of a complement to the industry.
Okay.
We're not coming in to say we're out to kill so and so and compete with everybody. We just want to be a complement to all of the automotive industry, bring in and fill in the gaps. And even people that are recycling today may actually view us as an opportunity to continue value adding their products. So one of the things we're going to test is, you brought up the iron part. Iron, when it's compared to nickel, copper, cobalt, or lithium, is substantially cheaper.
Yes.
But there is some products that are worth more, not compared to those, but still worth more than normal iron type products. And one of them is the pigment industry. So the volumes we're going to have of iron, for example, in those lithium ion type powders will be very small. And we'd like to test making pigment with the iron, which sells for substantially more than your normal iron concentrate if it was just regular hematite. So those are some of the things that we'll be looking at in the next few months, and deciding, do we even take the time to do that, or do we add that to our modular rollout approach immediately?
So you're going to look at a modular approach, but you're also in talks for a battery recycling plant in Baie Comeau, which is a really interestingly strategic placement for it. I love it. You've got a few projects of your own that are in and around the peripheral of that that can kind of harmonize with that. Why don't you talk to us about how that process is going, and do you think that you'll be able to achieve all the testing required to complete that feasibility study, and kind of a timeline of when you're hoping for
Yeah,
that?
so that's part of why there's a lot of pressure on
Yeah,
the chemistry team or the process team, because we have to, if you don't have a process flow sheet, feasibility study is not the right word to use then, right? So we
yeah,
have to complete things. That doesn't mean you can't have a flow sheet, and that this is where it gets touchy. People can mix up what we're trying to achieve versus what is being done already. If I didn't care about the lithium recovery, for example, or the nickel, the cobalt, which is a small weight in as a percentage of the battery, I can tell you we're ready to roll, and we'll recover 90% of the weight, and good for us, right?
yeah.
But what we're trying to do is not just that. We want to actually recover the critical elements. So that's the bottleneck
Mhm.
for that rollout. The other part of the strategic is there's a lot of things that are maybe not public right now. So I'm going to be a little evasive, but there's a lot of synergistic activity in the region. And if you look at it another way, it may not be perfect, but if Mike wanted to buy lithium from me and I had access to also spodumene, the odds are not just from my battery recycling, I could still supply you even if battery supply was short.
Oh, you're getting ahead of me, Enrico. We're going to touch on that. Just hold that thought.
Okay.
Okay, on that front, we're talking about PEAs and feasibility studies. ICM, you just received the bulk sample from ICM. Is this going to be enough material that's going to allow you to finish out your three-phase approach to that, or do you think there's still some refining on the tail end of this process?
So what we're doing is every time something is done with one particular product, we're also retesting it on the other ones just to see that there's no surprises. So the timing of this shipment is perfect because we'll be doing similar testing to what we're doing in battery recycling, spodumene, and the iconic material.
Okay. So maybe talk to us about some of the challenges that you faced. This has been a long, ongoing project. Lithium and clays, it's well known. It's really hard to get that lithium out, but you're pulling out 99% of the lithium out of this material. It's phenomenal. But what are the challenges that you're faced with in doing this process?
So this is always the same for any type of process. What goes in, what comes out,
Hmm.
how do you optimize it? So at the time, one of the areas that we looked at, which a lot of people have been using, is sulfuric acid, for example. And it doesn't matter if it's lithium or zinc or other products.
Hmm.
I think people don't realize that 1 ton of material going in, by the time you take care of the contaminants,
Hmm.
you might end up with 3 tons of material, which is neutralized, but still has to be landfilled.
Hmm.
And why that is that you've consumed acid, you have to neutralize it, and
Hmm.
you end up with this mass that, though it's neutral, still has to be buried somewhere as tailings. So we looked at that and we say lithium ranges from 0.1% to concentrates of in the range of 6%.
Hmm.
That's what your feed material is. Can we reduce the tailings? Can we reduce the chemical losses? Or can we at least try to recover the maximum of the chemical losses into a usable, saleable product so it's not a loss?
Right.
And that was the way the strategy started. Then we started to advance, and right now we're actually working on making the typical fertilizer that you buy for your lawn, for example, potassium, nitrates, and phosphates. Um, And that's what those symbols are when you read your bag. A lot of people don't look at the details. It says 10, 10, 10, 30, 10, you know, and it's phosphate, nitrates, and potassium. So that's what we're doing with our waste right now. That's what we're working on. When that's more advanced, we'll disclose that kind of information.
And due to the fine nature of the clays, I would imagine that separation process becomes more complicated because of that. But there's talks of Tesla using salt water and doing some of their extractions. Can you touch on any of that, or would you rather not?
I'll touch briefly. Like, I think there's a lot of confusion when people read articles. You know, there's different types of forms of lithium. You
Mhm.
know, you have your brines, which we're used to seeing pictures of ponds evaporating, concentrating, and then pumping that in. And that'll typically be hydrochloric based. Okay. Then you have the spodumene type resources, and those are treated differently.
Mhm.
In the clay, because we have so much surface area, it leaches relatively easily. So that was one of the reasons why it just takes a few minutes and we'll put it in solution. Surface area is your friend for leaching. The fineness may be your enemy for the other parts of the process. But in this case, when people talk about what they're going to do, I try not to go into the details of it because everybody's resource is slightly different.
Yeah.
And I don't want to jump to conclusions and say someone's not right when they might be right. And
Mhm.
I prefer to not discuss what I don't know.
That's fair. I appreciate that. So, Enrico, the golden question for you is, what makes your process stand out above the rest?
Um, I would say that what's so unique about it is that we're just trying to take everything off the shelf and not reinvent the wheel.
Mhm.
We don't want to be someone who says we invented a new wheel. Well, we're just going to buy equipment. So the grinding, segregating equipment that exists, we'll work with the leaders in that industry. We might make them modify something because we're trying to recover more of the critical elements, but we're not going to make major overhauls on it. And then the rest of it is all equipment that again comes from the industry. So, you know, a lot of people hear about certain types of acids and they don't even realize that, for example, nitric acid is very, very often used in the stainless steel industry.
Mhm.
So that's where I started my career. So I'm very comfortable with who could supply the equipment and the all the infrastructure, how you capture your fumes, all those things are all standards. And we're applying everything that already existed. So I know it doesn't sound that dramatic, but that's actually good because it
Mhm.
de-risks a lot of the process.
See, and I would have thought you would have said the amount of lithium you're able to extract out of those clays, because I haven't found anybody that even comes close to challenging the numbers you're pulling out.
Yeah. So again, you know, we're working on all of them. So we have a focus on batteries, we have a focus on spodumene, we have a focus on the clays. Each one is slightly different challenges. So far, spodumene seems to be focused the same way as the clay,
Mhm.
but let's make sure now that's what the next phase will be. And we're the leach, the selective leach seems to be working everywhere. So check, check, check. But let's make sure the other items are in line too.
Excellent. So you've alluded to the spodumene hard rock lithium extraction. It seems like that process is working and working well because typically in hard rock lithium deposits, your percentages are a little bit higher, so you have a little more wiggle room to work with. Have you been approached by any North American hard rock spodumene operations that might be interested in utilizing your process?
So we've been working on so many fronts that we decided to complete the work, which is
Mhm.
going on in parallel to the batteries. And I think by this fall, we'll be probably waving that little flag saying we exist, and maybe we can retrofit your facilities and make it greener or more economical. But before you do something like that, complete your work, and that's what we're doing. We're trying to be diligent.
So remember I said to park that thought. Now I'm going to ask you to pull that thought back out again. I was going to ask you how the properties in Quebec, i.e. Julie Nickel and Manicouagan, but beyond that, you've got you got your fingers into a lot of different areas. You work with a lot of different companies. You're all over Quebec. How did these deposits form a synergy with what you're doing with the battery recycling? And you already kind of answered this, but elaborate for me, please.
Yeah, so this is always what happens when people do a financial turnaround, right? The first things that people do is all the obvious: cut personnel, try to buy cheaper, this, that, that. And by the time you get to look at it, all that's been done already. And
Hmm.
what's usually overlooked is the synergies with people outside of your own industry.
Hmm.
And so we took a step back and we looked at, if a location, what are the things that are there? So one is, okay, if you have access to spodumene and Mike wants to buy lithium, even if my battery recycling is slow because the batteries weren't available, I can guarantee you the lithium.
Yeah.
And the same with nickel, for example. So that's kind of where that part of the synergy is. But, each one has to stand on its own. But I think the way we're developing and moving forward, we may become a more strategic partner for people in the future. Let's not jump to that conclusion yet. Let's do our work. But I think the industry has to do more than just weight recovery of a battery. And I think the recyclers have to be in line with what the industry needs as well, and who are their partners. So that's why when I said we want to be a complement, we
Hmm.
maybe complement people in many different ways around the world. And if we do this in a modular approach, that's flexible as the industry changes, if the battery changes, we'll still be there. I don't foresee critical elements disappearing tomorrow. That's
Hmm.
involved with batteries. So I think we'll be well positioned. And I can't talk about everything that's going on in that region, but there's a lot of synergistic activity with a very green focus that I think we'll be able to copy in many other areas. So instead of looking at it as a competitor, we're going to present it as a showcase
Yeah.
that can be copied to other regions and cities.
So let's step outside the box here a minute, because Enrico, I love your approach and how you look at projects. We've talked many times about different things all over the world, including Cuba and Mexico and Europe, but I want to focus in on something here because I don't think that people really have their head wrapped around as to all of your experience and what you've done. You've got a lot of experience in the iron ore industry, but you also have some patents in TiO2. So without going too far off base, maybe we'll sit down and we'll talk about this another time in a completely separate interview because I think it's a topic all in its own. But talk to us a little bit about some of the stuff you've done with iron ore and the TiO2, and then we'll jump back into maybe talk about Iceland.
Well, that's a good question, because most people don't realize that the biggest problem in the non-ferrous industry is iron. You'll find iron everywhere. So if you have a copper deposit, IOCG is iron ore, copper, gold. If you have a nickel deposit, it's always full of iron, and
Yeah.
so on and so on. So I think the experience I had with the iron and steel industry at all facets has actually served me well, because there's a lot of well-known cheap solutions. As you may know, steel
Mhm.
sells for a lot less than nickel, or a
Yeah.
lot less than copper, and a lot less than lithium. So that industry has been forced to become as efficient as they can be. But a lot of that can be applied to the non-ferrous industry. And so that's where some of the innovation comes from, is taking known solutions from other industries and bringing them together. It has nothing to do with being brighter than everybody else. It's just applying well-known solutions. And that's really been the approach.
Okay, so I'd love to talk to you more about that. Again, I'm hoping that you'll be available to do another interview because I really want to dig into your TiO2 stuff. So I know you didn't say much about it there, but let's plan that for another time. right now we have an active volcano going off in Iceland, and I've seen you on Twitter. You've expressed some interest to get your hands on a sample. Talk to us about why that's important and what you could do with material like that being such a porous material.
Yeah, so I'm anxiously waiting for the sample to arrive. I guess, we have to be honest and let the lava cool instead of losing some people trying to collect it. But these types of formations tend to be porous, so they would actually grind relatively easily. The other advantage is, of course, it's going to be at surface, so you can go and collect it relatively easily without a complex mine.
Mhm.
It's not like you're going to have a great deal of difficulty determining what your resource is. It's going to be all at surface as well.
And it keeps
Um,
coming.
yeah, the scientific aspect of my mind is saying I'd love to see what it comes out as before it gets altered over time in nature. So
Mhm.
that'll be very intriguing. But there's a quantity of iron in there. There's a quantity of titanium. So that was a good question you asked. You maybe didn't even know you were leading to the lava, but around the world, generally rare earths or critical elements also follow the magnetite.
Mhm.
So I'm intrigued to see when that's concentrated, what happens. But it's very interesting that it happens to be on the properties of St. George and pouring out and growing because it's
Mhm.
still continuing to pour. It's not going to be like the size of a car. It'll be substantially bigger.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. We've got a live feed up on the St. George Eco Mining profiles, and I've been watching it. I sit on the profile watching that video all the time. So on that note, this is a new mineral resource that's presenting itself potentially. We don't know if it'll be viable or not yet, but um, Iceland also has something very unique. And you're a metallurgist. Maybe you can answer my inquisitive mind on this. There's a lot of geothermal fluids that are flowing in Iceland. And it's been proven now that it contains certain parts per billion of gold and other rare earth metals and base metals. As a metallurgist, do you not want to get your hands on that and try to extract those metals directly from the fluid versus the arduous task of mining?
Absolutely. So in all of those, the difference is when you go and take a sample, you can go with I'm going to exaggerate, with your pick and shovel. When you're talking about geothermal, it's a little bit more complex than that.
Mhm.
But that is one of the areas that the team in Iceland has been looking at. So, because of the volcano, we sometimes forget about the gold that's there, but
Mhm.
that's still the focus. And the last week was focused on the gold. There was a team in Iceland working on it.
Mhm.
But in parallel to that, there's maybe a lot of untapped potential in that. And at some point, when this COVID is reduced and I can
Mhm.
travel again, I'm going to be looking forward to seeing everything in Iceland.
Yeah, I hope I can make it out there too. I've been talking with Billy for a few years about making a trip out there, and whether it's personal or business, I'm going to get out there and get some footage because it looks like a beautiful place to visit.
Well, maybe you'll be there at the same time as me and we'll have a beer while we're looking at the volcano.
Hey, that's all right. As long as you don't try to get me to eat none of that fermented shark that they serve there, I'm all right with
Oh,
that.
I didn't look at the diet yet.
So, can you give us any update on Thormodsdalur? Are they actively going back to that area drilling this year, or you're kind of not in the loop on that so much?
There was a team right on site for the last week,
Mhm.
and I'll probably get an update when some of the team are back in North America, and we might update people from there at that point. I'm going to leave the team that's handling that discuss what they've been up to,
Yeah.
but everybody's still very enthusiastic about those properties.
Okay. Iceland, last thing about it. It's a green energy country. They have all the right infrastructure for a battery recycling plant. Could we see a battery recycling plant being built in Iceland if everything works out with Baie Comeau feasibility study to maybe tap into the European markets?
That's absolutely on the table. I think the way our strategy is going to develop is speed to market is important.
Mhm.
Acceptance in a particular country is important, and accessing the population. So, Western Europe, for example, is obviously an obvious growth area,
Mhm.
no different than North America with the NAFTA, right? And there'll be strategic areas like that around the world. So if Iceland can help with that, great. And then we move forward. That's maybe one step further. I'm really trying to get the work done for our showcase
That's
plant
fair.
here, but the strategy is the rollout, and it would be not uncommon to have that in a place like Iceland.
So along the lines of the tech, I'm going to wrap this up here. I just have a couple more questions. Along the lines of the tech, is this a technology that you're going to be looking to license out to blue chips, or are you going to try to keep this in-house and build your own battery recycling plants?
I think it'll go by opportunity, and there's a lot of intelligent people around, so we'll pick everybody's brain
Mhm.
when we make these decisions. There's pluses and minuses to everything. Yeah? So each country, if you have the right partner, could you just put your strategic piece to theirs? That's one option. Could it be licensing? Sure. I mean, again, licensing has its other drawbacks. Um, on the one hand, you don't have to invest your money to build it. You still have to make sure that your partners or your clients are running it properly so they make money, but you don't get your royalties. So you have to still manage it to a degree. But they're all possible options, and I think we're going to have to do a team huddle and look at how we roll out, and that'll probably happen more towards the fall than today.
Well, you've been extremely informative today, Enrico, and I know I've kept you for a little longer than I told you I was going to, so I'm sorry for that. My last question for you then, my man, is why should I invest my money in St. George Eco Mining and EVSX?
Well, I think what you're basically hedging your bets in this particular case. And again, I'm just going to look at it from the outside now. You have the potential of gold, you have potential of some critical elements, be it lithium, nickel, and other items, besides technology. So for the sake of discussion, if one doesn't work, you're still pretty hedged. And that's a nice place to be for an investor. I mean, if the gold in Iceland alone would be worth your investment. So if you add the other items to it and they all work, it's great. So that's how I look at it from the outside. I can't tell people what to do or not do, Mike, for their investments. But because of the hedging here, I
Mhm.
feel more comfortable that someone could be very successful.
Well, I've already placed my bets anyways, Enrico. It's okay. I was more asking for the common investor who might be taking an interest in what you guys are doing right now. Anyway, buddy, thank you so much for joining me today. Like I said, let's catch up again real soon because I want to talk to you and pick your brain about some of the other stuff that you've been doing. But thanks again for joining me today.
Perfect, thanks.